We are here in beautiful, luscious Bali. I'm with the gorgeous Sarita and going to discussing today around the female spiritual path. And none other than I could imagine having this conversation with you. And I know you've been in this field of spirituality and mindfulness and sexuality and really just the path of enlightenment and waking up in this human body. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation for a while. So thank you so much for bringing your beauty and your wisdom in all the years that you've been in this human journey of chaos and craziness.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. So let's just dive right into it. And if you're listening to this before or after, feel free to write comments, feel free to reach out in any way, but we'll be just having a dialogue here and happy to have you all with us. So the female spiritual path, I know in my own journey in a male body, I know that path quite well, and I'm always learning and developing. But yeah, I mean, first, for those listeners that don't know you, I'd love to just hear a little bit about how you came into this journey. And you've been teaching in this field for 30, 40 years, and I know for myself, and stepping into Tantra and hearing your name and everything that came with it, I was so delighted to get to know you so well, especially the last few months here in Bali, and really just to feel the transmission of your love and the transmission of the work that you day in and day out have been traveling vigorously to share with people in the world. So yeah, thank you from the bottom of my heart, the work that you do.
Thank you. So I'll just say a little bit about my path. From a very young age, I was very thirsty to find the essence of life. And because of that, I left my hometown very young. That was in Riverside, California. So I left when I was 15. I hitchhiked all through North America, then all through Europe, overland to India. I reached India when I was 17. And I had the great good fortune when I reached India to first of all encounter Goenka and Vipassana meditation. And secondly, I encountered Osho, who became my spiritual master. And I remained in his community for 26 years. And then after he left his body, I remained in his community for 9 years. And then I went into the world. And I've been teaching since 1990. Wow. So I reached to Osho in 1973, early 1973. And I say also great good fortune, because Osho is one of the very rare spiritual masters who exist in this world, who equally honors the feminine and the masculine. So many spiritual paths do not honor the feminine, and this is one of the reasons I'm very passionate about this subject. Because I really love to bring into the awareness of everybody that the spiritual path for men may or may not suit women, and vice versa. So if we're aware what the feminine spiritual path is, what the masculine spiritual path is, then we can sense inside of ourselves what is calling us in any given moment. But I would say the predominance of interest or calling for the feminine will be the path of love and devotion. Predominance of interest for the masculine will be witnessing and meditation. And when we weave these two paths together, we actually have Tantra. This is what Tantra is made of, weaving together the masculine and the feminine paths of spirituality.
I love that definition, and I feel in your being you really weave that so well, and just seeing all the different faces and the places in which you show up in the world in that way. Yeah, and also, if those of you have seen the documentary Wild Wild Country, this amazing being was...
I was there.
She was there, yes. And there's a lot more to that the documentary didn't cover. That would be another whole podcast and conversation. Maybe we'll do it again. But yeah, so this journey with Osho, and I just feel, your reverence to him as a teacher, and he's come into my spiritual journey many times through the years, and I just feel the level of wisdom and almost awareness that was so far kind of before his time in many ways. It's just continuing to be spread throughout the years. And what you're speaking about with this weaving of masculine and feminine, like where do you feel like people get caught up with that? Because you've entered this body in a female form. I've entered in a masculine form. Regardless of whatever else anybody wants to call, at the end of the day, that's the two polarities that we know. But in the years of working with people, like where do you see people struggle with that the most, especially those in female bodies? Like where is their deepest struggle in that spiritual journey?
Well, as far as I know, the deepest struggle comes from misconceptions which have become embedded in our psyche as if it was reality. And I'd like to go back a few thousand years, actually, to bring some understanding to that. Because both Buddha and Mahavira, two very great spiritual masters, made the statement that women cannot be enlightened while they are in a female body. If they want to be enlightened, they have to come back again into a male body. And when I heard these statements for the first time, I was furious, really furious, because I was on the path to enlightenment. That was, my life has been dedicated to that. So I was so enraged, and I did a lot of Osho's active meditations to purge all my emotions and, all of that. And then I started a very dedicated research trying to find out why they said that. And slowly, over time and with ever deepening meditation, I came to understand they said that because the paths they are offering are suitable for the masculine, not really suitable for the feminine. The paths both of them are offering rely on witnessing and meditation. And this is a very natural spiritual path for the masculine. When women follow these paths, witnessing, meditation, austerity, they become kind of dried up, like the juiciness and the sensuality of the feminine is lost completely. Now, some people might disagree with me, but I can assure you, if you are a woman in a woman's body and you start following a more feminine path, then all your natural tendencies to be juicy, to be sensual, to be joyful, to have emotional fluidity, all this will be possible. In other words, you can grow on the spiritual path while being very feminine. And that has practically been forgotten. The fact that there is a path for women has almost been forgotten. It's been covered in weeds, in dogmas of all kinds, in misunderstandings. So even in today's world, you will find many different spiritual masters who simply do not address the needs of the feminine at all, zero. And so because I'm passionate about this subject, obviously because I'm in a female body and I'm on the path of enlightenment, I made it my business to understand very deeply what this feminine spiritual path is, how women can evolve, how women can become enlightened in our own unique way. Now, I'd like to raise a subject which might be surprising for some people. The fact is that our spiritual path follows our genitals and what is going on with our sexuality. This might be very shocking for some people. But I'd like to explain it in a little detail. Is it okay?
Of course, yes.
So basically, if you read about the man's experience of enlightenment, it follows something like this. The Kundalini awakens, then it moves almost like a rocket up through the central channel, explodes at the crown chakra into that 1,000-petaled lotus, and enlightenment. Voila! You got it. Nirvana, enlightenment, etc. Now, what does that remind you of? If you look into it, well, it reminds you of ejaculation, doesn't it? It is something like an ejaculation. but instead of the energy going down and out for procreation, it's moving in and up for spiritual transformation. And this works perfectly. Like, this map is very good for the masculine, and it is true. For the feminine, that map doesn't work, because what is the woman's sexuality? It's very different. The fact is that in the woman's sexuality, the focus will be more on the heart, on nurturing, bonding, connection, before we start getting sexy. Like, we need to feel that quality of connection, love, and tenderness. And then we start opening up our sensuality and eventually our hot sexuality. However, our hot sexuality is, in all cases, going to be quite receptive, because we have a yoni. The lingam is penetrating the yoni. So in a sense, we are being penetrated by the divine. So whether that penetration comes from the yoni and it's moving in and up through us and creating an expansiveness into greater fields of love, or whether we are receiving the descent of grace, we are always in that receptive state. And a lot can happen in receptivity. Now, a misconception has happened that somehow receptivity is lesser than this penetrative action, that to be receptive means that you're downtrodden, because that's what's become connected with it. But actually, receptivity is expansive, and the womb of the woman energetically can expand to be the womb of the universe. When I took sannyas from Osho, the initiation into sannyas, he gave me the name Ma Ananda Sarita. Ma means mother of the universe. This is a Sanskrit word, very beautiful. And Ananda means bliss. Sarita means river, river of bliss. But this pre-name, Ma, mother of the universe, is very significant for the woman's spiritual path, because in essence our enlightenment happens by expanding into that being, that universal womb where we contain all that is, we nurture all that is.
So really what I'm hearing for you is that as a feminine female path, this place of like vast receptivity and expansion that really holds almost the entire universe in of herself, and whereas this masculine spiritual path of like direct, like a lingam, like this direct pillar that's like wow. And I love this kind of analogy you're sharing with that, because I feel like that is what often I see get lost in spirituality. I know in my own journey, like the way I found first kind of a deeper awakening was in meditation, in the stillness, in this presence. And then as I have journeyed more into Tantra, it's like, wow, I can still find that space as I feel everything. But feeling everything, a lot of people don't do it, right? Because there's fear. So like that fear of, wow, there's a lot inside there. I know for myself, like when I went into, I'm in a male body, but first time I did like a womb activation in my own ethereal womb, I was like, wow, there's a lot happening inside there. And it almost feels like too much. I can feel where maybe some people might get a glimpse of that and say, maybe I'll just go back to normal life, because this is a lot here. So
it's a lot.
like how does somebody like have the willingness and the capacity and the dedication to go into that everything? Because life doesn't really promote to go into everything. It's like, do the one thing, do it well, keep going on that singular focus. So to someone listening who's maybe had that vast expanse of everything and can get a little bit afraid of it, or all the trauma and the ugliness and the despair and the suffering that sometimes is inside of that, like where can they move forward in that place to feel the everything but not get too overwhelmed?
So I would say what is very important is to first of all stay with your biology, master that, learn from that, extract the nectar of what is inherently true in the body that you are given. And then once you've done that, then you start expanding, and you experience the other polarity. And it will actually happen very naturally. If you imagine the Yin Yang symbol, this one symbol which exists from the Chinese Taoist tradition, has everything within it. It has all truth within it. So I'm just going to explain. You have the Yin Yang symbol. One side is black, and it has a little white hole in it. The other side is white with a black hole in it. And this is very symbolic. The black is the yin, and the white hole in it is the yang. And this means that when you live your yin completely and fully, if you're in a woman's body, for example, you're living the yin path, you live it fully and completely, and automatically a portal will open into yang. And vice versa, if you live your yang fully and totally, a portal will open that feeds into yin, because life is made up of polarity. So as you are at the peak of the wave, automatically it will come into the trough of the wave. If you are in yang, automatically it will flow into yin, and vice versa. So what men and women are doing together is actually maintaining their polarities and then slowly merging these polarities into its opposite. This is the fullness of the yin and yang experience. But also the path of enlightenment mirrors that. So as a man matures, his flowering will be into yin. He will flower into love and compassion. If a man is enlightened, he is overflowing with love and compassion, more even than any woman could ever be. And the vice versa is true. If a woman follows her spiritual path of love and devotion, she will flower into meditation and witnessing. And it also happens in lovemaking. As I said before, the spiritual path mimics our sexuality and our sensuality. It mimics our bodies, actually. So when you're in lovemaking, you're in deep embrace, and the tip of the lingam is kissing the cervix. It will create what I call the Tantric circle. The energy between the male and the female will start spinning faster, till you don't know anymore who is the male and who is the female. I'm sure you've had that experience.
Yes.
It's awesome. So this happens between the first and second chakra, and I'll explain more about that later. But that circle is happening between first and second chakra. The energy is spinning, and then you keep on changing roles. Now this can also happen on a bigger scale. It can happen with all the chakras, this energetic circle, tantric circle. And this is simply a mind-blowing experience. And I know some people might be very curious, but how do I make sure that can happen to me? I want to know
what do I do?
Basically, if you imagine, this is again playing with these opposite polarities, the masculine is penetrating, so the lingam is giving, he's penetrating. However, the tip of the lingam is like a small yoni, isn't it? And it has the potential to also be receptive, that tip. It's like a little yoni that's going to drink from the mouth of the womb. The woman's second chakra is giving. So that giving quality is coming through the cervix, actually. And so when the tip of the lingam kisses the cervix, the tip will open and start drinking the gift that's coming from the cervix, which is that womb-centered energy, which is, you know, all that containing all that is, womb of the universe. So the man is giving a transmission through his penetration, she's receiving, but then she starts giving the transmission through her cervix, and he's receiving at the same time. And that creates this energetic tantric circle. So the way to practice it is to avoid strong thrusting, but rather you might have some thrusting before, so energy is really activated, but then you will be resting more in a kind of stillness or undulation. Instead of the thrusting action, you're just undulating like a snaking quality, and tip of the lingam is literally kissing that tip of the cervix, and then energetically it will just start happening. Of course, if you want to go into this, you shouldn't be in a hurry. It's important for the feminine to have at least 20 to 40 minutes of erotic play before penetration, in order for the woman to be fully activated and ready for the masculine. Now, I know in terms of our sexuality, we tend to follow the masculine-oriented sexuality. But as I said before, yang flows into yin, yin into yang. So if any sexual union can contain equal amount of yang and yin, then it will be a fulfilling union. If you only go yang, 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 and then finished, that's only half of a fulfillment that's possible. The fullness of fulfillment comes when both are weaving together.
The weave of Tantra, the weave and the flow.
Tantra is always weaving together the opposites.
Yes.
Any two opposites, when they meet, you will experience godliness or goddessness, as you like.
Yeah, it reminds me, my background coming from like a government military world, and was very yang, very that, in this way. And when I first got into these practices, and there was this thought of like going into my feminine, I thought, oh, I'm going to lose my power, I'm going to lose my yang. And that was my exact experience, was like the deeper I went into the yin, the deeper I went into these very uncomfortable, like almost like bodily cosmic places where it just felt like so bizarre, but I was in the everything. And then when I would come back and in the integration, it was like my yang was even more like diamond clarity, and my yin just was like my feminine side was like, yeah, okay, I get to play and get to come alive again. And I think this piece is so important, especially in the world we're in now, that and I can see this Yin Yang diagram, and I love that analogy with the head of the penis actually opening and receiving.
It's mind-blowing.
And for a male body, like the gift of receptivity is challenging. I love to give, and I love to be that giver, but to actually receive has been a big growth piece for me in many ways.
Yes. And maybe I can also use another analogy, which I think is very important to understand the difference of the male and the female. In India, we have this beautiful Shiva Linga. So I'm sure you've seen that. I'm sure maybe the listeners have seen that. It's a phallic symbol carved in stone that rests in the symbol of the female genitals, also carved in stone. So you always have the masculine resting in the feminine. And the name for this phallic symbol is the Shiva Linga. Linga means pillar of light or pillar of consciousness. And then the surrounding vulva is yoni, and that means sacred place. So the yoni and the feminine is literally that sacred place, and the male phallus is that pillar of light. And this is indicating very profoundly the male spiritual path and the female spiritual path. And because the sacred place is a place where you can go and rest in and just let go and be surrounded by love. This is the sacred place. And the pillar of light is that which is very alert and conscious. And simultaneously, there's been a lot of misunderstanding about the masculine and feminine paths of spirituality, because the feminine by nature is very emotional. So we talked about the female sexuality to a certain extent, about that being receptive. But the second chakra, the womb center, is a giving or power center in the woman, and it is a receptive center in the man. Just imagine when the man is penetrating the woman, he's giving a gift and she's receiving the gift. When the belly centers come together, the woman is giving the gift, man is receiving the gift. Now, what is the gift she is giving? Emotions, emotional dynamism. And emotions are just like weather. So imagine you have rain, sun, wind, you have hot sunny days, cold days, snow, etc. It's constantly changing. That keeps a dynamic balance in the environment. the woman with her emotionality is keeping a dynamic balance in the environment of human relations within herself, but also with others. And if we can accept that, just like we accept the weather, we will be much better off. Just imagine if you had a world where there's no weather. So it's always the same, stagnant. It would be super stagnant, very unpleasant. The fact that there's changeability, it keeps the air and everything fresh and alive. So the tendency in our human society is to say emotions are not good, we have to repress them. And so therefore the feminine power is being repressed. And this is not a good situation. We need those emotions. However, we can learn to live them in a very conscious way. We don't have to dump them on others, become a raving bitch. We can manage our emotions in such a way that they are a blessing to ourselves and to others. Because just think of the rain. When the rain comes, it cleans the earth. It leaves everything very fresh. So sometimes when a woman is crying, sobbing, and releasing, it makes the air around suddenly fresh, vulnerable, tender, ready to plant seeds of love. And I'm sure you've experienced that in your life.
Many times.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So the woman just before her menstrual period, for example, will have the tendency to either rage or cry or do something to move the energy, and then that gives a space for her menstrual period to arrive. And if a man is really present and understanding, he doesn't have to fix her, but just can be present with those emotions, and a lot will open and flow in that relationship dynamic.
And I found that, for me through the years, I used to understand that conceptually. I was like, okay, yeah, I need to hold my Shiva and let her cry and let her be angry. But it wasn't until I actually had a visceral, embodied experience of my own emotions that I could have a deeper, relation to what she was going through. And then it's less of a, oh, something's weird about you, but I'm just going to try to hold presence. It's like, wow, I can really actually feel that, and inside of that feeling I can still hold within it. And that was a really big shift, because I think inside of the capacity to feel, when the world I grew up in was, boys don't cry, big boys don't cry, that's not allowed, women are cry, and when they do, something's probably wrong with them, stick a tampon in them, give them a tampon, that will make it all better. That's often this place of emotions, and it's really sad. And I think the other thing I want to bring in this conversation is, as a woman comes into her emotionality, and maybe she's been suppressed or oppressed and hasn't had a chance to do that. The other side of that sometimes women become so emotional and so
like a leaking tap.
Yeah, and it's like every day, and fair enough. If they've never had a chance to express, it's beautiful. But where does that line come in? And this I see you do so well. I can really feel your presence and your witness and your Shiva, and then I can also feel, I love watching you sing and dance and play. There's just this little girl that comes alive, and it's so my own feminine gets such a good transmission of what's possible, just to hear the birds, to smell the flowers, but to not get lost in the emotions that everything else goes away. I see some younger women come in this and they're like, oh, I'm in my Kali and I'm destroying everything and I'm in this full chaos, but there's something that intrinsically doesn't feel integrated about that. So I'd love to share a little bit of what you've observed with that side of the token.
So in terms of emotions, it's really important to have some spiritual practice which includes emotional fluidity. You hear a lot of people in the world talking about Kundalini activation, and I've also heard often that Kundalini is dangerous. To activate Kundalini too much is dangerous because it might create some explosion. It's only dangerous if the emotions are not integrated, that we have not achieved emotional fluidity. And I was very lucky to come to Osho at such a young age also, because he offers meditations which include emotional fluidity and emotional release. and then we'll go into phase of silence and witnessing or dance. So there's an integration of those emotions through the whole system and bringing it into a state of gratitude and celebration. So I really highly recommend to practice Osho active meditations. There's many of them, with dynamic being one of the most well known. But also he has this process Mystic Rose, which is absolutely mind blowing. The dynamic meditation lasts for 1 hour, and it's recommended to do it as a series for 21 days every day. Mystic Rose is a 21-day process where you are literally laughing for 3 hours a day for 7 days. The next 7 days you are crying for 3 hours a day.
Oh my God.
And the third 7 days you are sitting and witnessing, becoming a witness of body, mind, and emotions. So this is actually the most phenomenal, transformational life experience that's possible, I believe. It's incredible, because you're working not only on your own emotions, but on the collective as well. And in terms of the emotions of the second chakra and the feminine, in the second chakra there is also a portal into death and into birth. The woman is the custodian of both birth and death. And this is exhibited very fully and deeply through the menstrual cycle, because when we are in our fertile phase, when we're ovulating, we are actually carrying a nest ready to hold an embryo. So we are nurturing that with our own blood, with our own resources, and then if pregnancy doesn't happen, that nest will go out in the form of the menstruation, and this is a small death, where the woman's hormonal system will drop to almost nothing, and she needs to go into a kind of hibernation experience, even if it's just for a few hours, while her energy starts building again and recharging. And that's similar to the male ejaculation, where he releases enough sperm to populate half the planet. Then of course he needs to rest, and so his energy levels drop for a period of at least 20 minutes before he starts recharging. And so the woman goes through this small death every month, and she also goes through birth, because she is preparing to carry life. And if she's pregnant, then of course she will carry that new life to term and then be giving birth and coming into the phase of mothering. So the second chakra is holding this immensely powerful energies of birth and death, and also all the emotional states that exist between birth and death. This is all in this lower belly womb area. It is a positive polarity. So a woman's spiritual path by necessity needs to include these emotions and these portals of birth and death as an integral part of the practice a woman will do. And as she does that, she will come more fully into her power as the divine feminine. She will literally experience herself as the goddess. And of course it doesn't end there, because that's only the second chakra.
There's a whole other...
There's lots more.
Lots more. I love what you're just sharing. Actually, just yesterday, one of the other speakers in the symposium was sharing about her journey with miscarriage, and just the actually just allowing death to reside inside of her womb. And there was this, you know, kind of fear that was coming up around it, but like some of the elders around her was like, really take this journey with death just to experience it more deeply. And I could really feel a shift within her of having that journey, and it's something, you know, in a male body, I will never know it to that extreme. I mean, maybe in other lives I have, but to really, what I hear and what you're sharing is a deeper experience and understanding of life and death, and recognizing the cycles of life and death that are with us every day, every month, and all around. And you know, not to say that the male path doesn't, the masculine path, you know, it takes away the death part. That's definitely there, but what I'm hearing you sharing is a much more like tangible connection to life and death.
Embodied experience.
Yeah, embodied, and it's, you know, embodied awakening is what we're all about here, and really to experience that in day-to-day life, and not something that we're afraid of reaching at the end of our lives and then saying, oh my God, we're at our, you know, rest in peace, because we never actually rest in our fullness during life.
Yeah. There's a beautiful saying, Sufi saying, die before you die, that you may truly live. So this says it all. Yeah. And another thing about the second chakra, while we're on that subject, is if the woman becomes pregnant, the child in her womb is going through all the cycles of evolution. So the whole evolutionary journey is happening in her womb. That means she's also the custodian of the evolution, the evolutionary journey of humanity, and all of creation, in fact. So this is probably why in ancient times the woman was worshipped as goddess, because the ancients recognized this fact. Now, in the suppression of the feminine, all that has been somehow forgotten, and the emphasis in spirituality has been on the masculine. And I would say, for a full-bodied experience of our spirituality, we need to equally honor the masculine role and the feminine role in that spiritual awakening. And that is truly an embodied awakening. When we bring the masculine and feminine together, we learn to navigate the opposites, find out what happens when they meet. This is a true spiritual research, as happens in Tantra. And this leads us into a full experience of the tree of life.
The tree of life that gives us life.
Yes.
And you know, the piece that one of the reasons I've put together this integrated feminine symposium is to really share a more healthy form for what feminine leadership can look like. Because I, you know, in my own journey in life, in childhood, I've only, like, very rarely have I feel like I've seen a great, like, example of strong, clear feminine leadership. I feel like there's been different, like, really bad examples of masculine leadership, and also some really good ones. So, like, in the world that we're moving into, with all of the chaos and the falling apart and everything that's happening on a global scale, like, what would be the message, especially for female bodies, but also, you know, for the feminine in us all, to step into how can we take all of these principles we've been talking about and actually, like, lead from that place to actually be the change and create the world that we're longing to create. And I know there's a lot that has to be, you know, there's a lot of destruction as construction happens. But what message, or what would you say to some of those beings who really want to see a different world where feminine leadership is more alive, where, you know, if you talk about patriarchy, that starts to dissolve, and there's more of this, like, allowness of everything into our life? But how can we lead from that space, and what is kind of the world that you envision in that way?
I envision a world where the masculine is living his exalted state, the divine masculine, I call it, and the woman is living her exalted feminine, the divine feminine, and these two are weaving together. And I just speak a little bit into this principle of women's empowerment and women's liberation. Of course, men also need to be liberated, but we'll speak into the feminine for the moment. That when the women's liberation movement started, what was happening is that women were completely downtrodden. They didn't have any rights, they couldn't vote, etc. They had to stay in the house, just look after the children, do whatever the husband wanted. In a sense, they were a piece of property owned by the husband. And so they saw that men are more powerful than the woman, and they wanted a piece of the action. And of course, the natural tendency was to think, if I want to be powerful like men, I have to copy men. So women went out and got women's rights, and then started copying men, smoking cigarettes, doing gambling, doing anything that men did, drinking, etc., cutting the hair short, and just trying to mimic men. And then that carried on into the business world, where you have these high-powered business women who are behaving more macho than any man, like really extreme masculine behavior. And of course, within that, they will feel very unhappy because then they are polarized in the masculine. It will be very hard for them to attract a mate. They can't find a lover who's going to be suitable for them because they're going to cut his balls, and then they'll be condemning him because he's not a man, etc. So this whole syndrome has been playing out. And so what I would suggest as a more intelligent way forward is that women tune to our own feminine empowerment, which is opposite to the masculine. And just as a way of understanding that, I'd like to speak about something that Lao Tzu said. Lao Tzu was a great enlightened being from Taoist China. And he said that yin is like water, yang is like rock, and water wears away rock. So think about it. You have all the sand on the beach that was once rock, that slowly got worn by the sea, by the water, and turned into sand. And this is a very delicate way of saying that the feminine is a more powerful force, even though it looks weaker. Water looks weaker because you can't hold it in your hand, you can't do something with it, it's always flowing. So this is the feminine. Man looks stronger because he's very solid, he's like rock, he's there, he can get things together, whatever. And so this very delicate way Lao Tzu expressed it is really something to meditate over, because water can be very soft, it can also be super powerful. Think of a tsunami, huge waterfall, etc. You can create electricity with it, you can do many things with water. And of course it is the very source of our life. So what Lao Tzu said in that one simple statement has huge implications. And if women will just remember that instead of turning ourselves from water into rock, be the watery substance that we are, and let it express itself in myriad ways. Sometimes like a calm, placid lake, sometimes like a wild, raging sea, and sometimes like a waterfall. So there's many different ways we can experience this yin energy. And of course the yin also includes expressions of love, devotion, being in service, nurturing. This is so natural for the feminine. Now just imagine a world which has in its very fabric qualities of love, devotion, and nurturing. As a mother is with her child, so this world can be like that we have nurturing governance, we have love inherent in every fabric of our culture, and also, yes, in the business world we have love which can be present. And this is something that we're still working towards as a human race, and I hope we achieve it very, very soon. Now, it's not to say that the world should be governed only by women, because I don't believe that. It had happened in the past, in ancient times, when there were matriarchal cultures, that women were ruling. And in some of those cultures, the women were also doing horrendous things. Like, just an example, in ancient Greece, there was a goddess worshipping culture, and so there was a temple where the men would literally cut off their balls with their own hands, and offering themselves in service of the goddess, and keep the knife in the belt very proudly to show what he's done, that he has emasculated himself in service of the goddess. Now this is obviously very stupid, in my opinion, just idiotic. And there were also matriarchal cultures where there would be human sacrifice of men. Now this is also stupid. So women have done very stupid things to men. Men have taken revenge and have done extremely stupid things to women. It's time for this to end. It's time for us to be more intelligent, to bring weaving together the attributes and the wonderful gifts inherent in the divine masculine, divine feminine, and achieve that sense of weaving together into one cloth, one fabric of life. And that fabric, the way to achieve this is Tantra. Because Tantra is so intelligent, how it equally honors the masculine and the feminine, and through methods of meditation finds ways to honor both and to bring a oneness of both.
So much wisdom. I feel like we could talk here for hours and just keep flowing.
Definitely. I have it all mapped out how to save the world.
Yes, it's all there. And you know, you were sharing earlier, you know, one of the things that I love that you do is your Soulmate Training, and my partner Raven and I did the first edition of that. You know, first time that we had done that back a few months ago, and a lot of what you were sharing earlier we were, you know, introduced to, and there's, you know, different concepts and ideas that, you know, I'd already been, you know, teaching and bringing in, but I just love the fluidity to which your, you know, your wisdom and stories kind of meet in a place that allows for the everything to be experienced, and really beyond judgment. It's like the world we're in right now, there's a lot of, well, this way is right and this way is wrong and this is this, and like there's such an inclusivity of like loving acceptance that exudes from your being, and I really, you know, I honor that, you know, within you. And I really, you know, this whole podcast series is all about conversations with queens, and you know, I can feel, you know, your very being, even the way you set up this our gazebo for a conversation. I was like, okay, I'm entering the goddess's throne. What shall happen today? And you really have this queen essence that isn't trying to have power over, that isn't trying to prove herself, that just wakes up every day in her karma yoga, in your place of being in service, because I can feel there's really nothing else that brings you more joy and the connection to nature. It's really beautiful to witness and to see.
Thank you. So this, you know, Aaron is talking about this soulmate training. This is one of my passions, is to offer a spiritual path for couples. So I do that through this 7-level soulmate training. It takes about 3.5 years to do 7 levels together as a dedicated spiritual path for couples. Of course, including all the joys of sexuality, love, and spirituality, and weaving these together, masculine, feminine, sex, love, and spirit. And we discover so much about ourselves and the opposite gender as a result of this. And it brings such a flowering to the whole phenomena of love and relating. And for me, it brings a lot of sadness to see in the world that I think the main suffering people carry is around the subject of sexuality, love, and relating. Because I've been giving sessions for years also, as well as teaching. And in the individual sessions, the main subjects people are bringing are subjects around relationship, the joys, the sorrows, the agonies, the realizations, and everything in between. And this is such an important subject, because if you think about it, our world is made not only of individuals, but of couples. And the more harmony we can bring to individuals and couples, the more harmonious our world will become. As long as there's a schizophrenic split inside of us and in our culture around coupling, that will leak into the culture as a whole. So we need to bring that joy and harmony that is possible in sexuality, in relationship, and then we can literally transform this world. And of course, one of the meanings of Tantra is transforming poison into nectar. And so I really love this meaning. Through Tantra, we can just apply witnessing consciousness, meditation, love, and devotion to anything in life, and it will be transformed into its ultimate potential. And the potential of everything in life is divine.
Pure divinity.
So even anger we can turn into a meditation. It becomes a portal to expand our consciousness.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess the last thing for women or male bodies that are listening to this, that are really like wanting to step into their queendom, step into their queendom with their feminine spiritual path, what are like the three non-negotiables that have like really supported you, like very clear little nuggets that you kind of take with you every day to kind of step into and be that queen that you are so beautifully?
I think the most powerful transmission or experience I can offer in this regards is the three positive polarities in the feminine, which are linked to the second chakra, fourth chakra, and sixth chakra. Sixth chakra, of course, representing clairvoyance, intuition, which is another powerful attribute that the feminine has. So when we accept the wisdom and the experience and the lessons that are happening in second chakra, fourth chakra, and sixth chakra as women, we will automatically come into our fullness, wholeness, and potential. And if we apply that also to our sexuality, we will have fulfilling sex. And if we apply it to our spirituality, we will have a fulfilling spiritual path. If we apply it in business, we will have a coherent and very successful business, because we are bringing together our power centers and accessing greater power and potential within ourselves from a space of loving acceptance of who we are. And I think the men might be very curious, whichever persons are looking at this who are in male bodies or associating themselves with the masculine, they'll be wondering, what about the men? What about the men? Where's the power centers for men?
Where are the men?
So I just throw that in. For the men, it is the first chakra, the third chakra, and the throat chakra. So these are three power centers for the masculine. I could spend another few hours discussing about that. That will be another time.
Another time, another conversation.
And just so you know that when I do when I offer a technique during the symposium, the online symposium, so I'm going to offer a special meditation for women. It's called the Goddess Essence Meditation. And then I will take you on an experiential journey through your positive polarities. And there will be a lot of realizations, awakening, embodied awakening through those three power centers as we go into that meditation.
Sounds pretty amazing. I look forward to the offering you're bringing, and if you want to check that out, go to the integratedfeminine.com. You can find out all the information. Sarita is one of over 60 other incredible teachers and very powerful women who are coming into the space, and I just want to share how much gratitude I have for you. It's been such a pleasant surprise just to have you come into my life and just to share. And I know just this morning I finished this really amazing color light prenatal journey. That's another whole conversation. I feel like every time I go in deeper with conversation, there's like another encyclopedia of things that come in there. There's tachyon, there's so much that you offer, that you bring into the world. And I'll put Sarita's website below. There's a lot of online offerings for men, for women, a lot of places where you in the comfort of your home can dive into all of her teachings. And again, you can check out more at the Integrated Feminine, which is coming up soon. She'll also be a whole 8-week online course as well. So such a joy, Goddess. Thank you.
Thank you. Love you.
Love you. Thank you all for being here.